and we first did this rental of our software, the senior management said, no, we've tried all of this rental software. It'll never work. And then after the success that we had with Barclays Bank, then they said, yeah, this is really important. This is a great success.
I think SaaS represented a shift from the traditional software deployment methods, but I'm just keen to understand, Phil, for people who weren't familiar with this period, but how did businesses initially react to this new way of sort of accessing and purchase and using software? What were some of the early challenges around widespread adoption of software as a service?
Yeah, so I think when I was my job before setting up the Business Software Centre, or TBSC, was working for Intuit, and our primary product was QuickBooks for small businesses. And at that time, I worked with Barclays Bank and some other banks. And what we started to do was make available QuickBooks for small businesses on a rental basis. So it was on a subscription business. And obviously at that time, it was all loaded onto their own devices. And then they could use it as their small business accounting system. And the problem was always, how do you manage to sort of control or even turn off the software if people stop paying for it? Now, with the advent of cloud and the hosting of it, then it became a lot easier to control the subscriptions. And one of the big problems at the beginning was people trusting having their data in somebody else's environment. And that was the big thing to overcome. And I think that's probably still one of the issues that SaaS organizations have to face with some organizations, particularly with the security issues that are now happening. Because it's still the customer's data, and the customer has to realize that it's their data. So if they've got it in Azure, Microsoft is not responsible for their data. They're just hosting it. The customer is still responsible for the security of the data. And I think that's always going to be one of the big issues. You can't hold AWS or Microsoft responsible for the security of your own data. You're just using their facility to host it.
Yeah. What were the sort of key milestones, do you think, in what products really pushed SaaS from a periphery fringe model, sort of, what would you call it? Like, for certain products on the fringe, it pushed, what products pushed it into the mainstream? I'm assuming it was probably Microsoft. Is that right? Or was it somewhere else that pushed this SaaS pricing model into the mainstream?
I think it was really Salesforce was...
okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't think of them. Yeah,
Salesforce,
of course.
The story goes that there was Larry Ellison, Oracle, with some of a couple of his senior managers, and they were talking about how things were going to go in the future. And I can't remember the names of the guys. I do have it somewhere, but the two guys were saying about the future and for software as a service and moving towards hosting the software rather than it being on their other on a customer's own devices. And the guy who set up Salesforce was one of those guys, and he started then with it and set up the business, and the rest is history. Of course, Microsoft saw what was happening and then decided they had to be in on the cloud aspect and then move towards SaaS. But I think other organizations pioneered it. And I can remember when I was at Intuit and we first did this rental of our software, the senior management said, no, we've tried all of this rental software. It'll never work. And then after the success that we had with Barclays Bank, then they said, yeah, this is really important. This is a great success. So they then looked at a SaaS version. And I think all organizations started to do this. Everybody suddenly realized SaaS was the model where you should go. And of course, having the platforms
Yeah.
like Azure has made it a lot easier because, like for us, we can just develop the technology a lot faster and then put it onto Azure, and it's very quick to deploy. We deploy upgrades every 2 weeks, and we can add in facilities. So those old days of trying to upgrade everybody and keep them on the same version, they're gone. You just have one platform to look after. And so the advantages are there.
Yeah.
There are some disadvantages, but the advantages for all software companies were there. And the greatest thing for the commercial model is the recurring revenue streams.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's definitely the norm now, isn't it? I think all software products are cloud based, and they operate in this model. And I think, well, what do you think the next evolution is for SaaS then, Phil? Do you see it evolving into something else over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, looking at software asset management, when I first was in TBSC, what we first were doing was looking at aspects like software asset management. And the bigger element then was compliance. And throughout the software industry, it was
Yeah.
always compliance. Has somebody got a valid license to be using this? Have they bought 10 licenses, but they're using it on 100 devices? That's largely gone out of the window now, because if you've not got a subscription, you can't use it. The problem for most customers now is the other way round. It's not compliance having enough licenses, it's having too many licenses, or having a license, let's say that's a pro license, but you're only using the standard facilities. So one of the things for the future is really for customers to understand if they're getting value for money from their investments. And I think that's something that needs to be tracked on a regular basis. It's not just, you can't do it just once when, say, there's an annual renewal. You need to be able to sort of do that on an ongoing basis. The other element, of course, for SaaS, as I've already mentioned, is security. We concentrate on Microsoft 365, and we can see really a dramatic rise, particularly September and this month, October, and just going back into the summer, a dramatic rise in the amount of malware and security alerts that are coming into people's tenancies. So this is growing, and there's a reason for it to grow, because it's highly profitable for the organizations that are doing this. In many organizations, they've got highly skilled people. They are set up as like a proper business, and they're very professional in what they're doing. I looked at one, and there'd been some tracking of this organization, and through the sort of cryptocurrencies, they'd collected $54 million in the past year. So these organizations are bringing in a lot of money from their ransomware and their threats. So I think for SaaS, that's going to be the big issue for the coming years, controlling it. And certainly we've seen a lot of growth in security alerts over the past few months. And that's probably something that customers have sort of said, well, we've not been attacked yet, we've not been compromised yet. It's too late when it happens.